But yeah, so we started this company. The folks in Germany had been talking to us for a while. They wanted to do something in North America. We started talking to them quite a while ago. We solidified everything. We did leave our positions at Pioneer. We've started this. And the folks there have been nothing more than supportive at ELAC Germany. They're allowing us pretty much free reign to do what we want. They understand that the way we want to launch into this marketplace is not by simply bringing over the products they sell in Germany over, which are higher end, because it won't do any good for the brand. In order to be able to build the brand, people have to be able to afford the products. And starting at the high end, there's so many great products out there that are expensive, it didn't make sense. So we figured what we would do is started something more people can afford and try to offer that price, performance price ratio that usually isn't found in this category. And the Debut Series was kind of born out of that. Since that February date, we've literally come up with, we're launching 8 models next week. All the products arrive at the dock on the 25th of September, and they start showing up every couple of days. They show up, so they'll start shipping out the very beginning of October to everybody. We have 3 more products, speaker products planned for CES. We have 3 more planned in May. We have a slew of electronics coming. We'll give you a sneak peek of one of those pieces of electronics, which is underneath that. It's a small electronics. But yeah, let me go through.
I think you're going to need a bigger building.
Yeah, well, no, that is the truth. So one of the deals, when I found this, I found the location, which is fantastic, because it happens to be 2.5 miles away from my house.
And 40 from mine.
Yeah, Andrew lives in Hollywood.
That's what you get for delegating.
Exactly. I don't want to deal with that, Chris. You deal with it. Okay. But one of the advantages, the Warland Business Park actually owns most of the industrial space in Cyprus. So if we want to move to a larger facility, they move us there for free, as long as we stay within the Warland complex. So that was part of the deal we negotiated. But this is a great complex. They're actually opening a police substation right across in that building right there, which to me is fantastic. Free speakers for all the police, as long as.
Chris, if you start more in the modest segment of the market,
Uh-huh.
do you have, does the market then have a perceptual bias that makes it hard for you to move up?
It depends on where you want to go. So if you want to say, and this is my opinion rather than Andrew's, if you say that, do we want to get to the point where I want to sell $80,000, $90,000 speakers, my answer would be no. I want to sell a $30,000 pair of speakers. That sounds like a $60,000 or $70,000 pair of speakers. So whatever
I would
price
sell an 80,000 that sounds like a $200,000.
you know, and that may get there, but I do think so. I mean, the step up from here to the next level is just is a substantial change. Some people actually got to see it out there, and I'll show it to everybody later on in the first little.
Yeah, ELAC Germany is already in that higher market.
Correct.
Not the ultra high market, but goes up to
24 a pair.
$24,000 a
Was that
pair.
the lacquered one?
That was the tobacco finish one.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, it's a little bigger version of that. That's the larger one. That's called the FS 507. The bigger one's the 509. But I think we'll still be able to do it. Depends. We're not going to go from one thing that I really don't want to do is go from, if we're at $229 for a pair of speakers, I don't want to make the next ones $1,000 a pair. That's too much of a leap. I want to make the next pair $500 a pair, and then make the next one $1,000 a pair, and then maybe the next one $2,000.
And then discontinue certain models as you move
No,
up?
I think this line, the entry level line, somebody asked a question on Avis for me the other day, and the goal is that the product lineups, especially at this price point, will have 3-year product cycles, and we'll always increase. There's always things. You have to realize when Andrew's doing something, he will never stop. You have to give him a deadline. You are done at this point, because he'll keep tweaking and tweaking and tweaking and tweaking. So everything that he wanted to do to these after that deadline, he'll work for the next model, and he'll keep making improvements even at these same price points. So that's part of the
engineering by definition.
It
Exactly,
is,
yes.
right.
Yeah.
What you said, if you knew what you were doing.
If I knew what I was doing, it wouldn't be research.
So this is the current ELAC logo. So ELAC means electroacoustic. That's where the ELAC stands for. And Klang Lept is currently the company tagline. And Klang Lept means sound lives. So that's what it translates to in German. We realize, and the folks, our superiors in Germany realize that we can't use Klang Lept here. Obviously that's not. So we're going to actually change that a little bit. So kind of who is ELAC? They have 65 years of audio experience. So in 1948 is when they got in the electronics business. Prior to that, they were in the sonar business. That's how they started as a company making sonar stuff. I left the pre-war stuff out.
The wartime.
Yeah, the wartime stuff. So 1948.
I
I know.
Who is that for?
I don't know what it is about me, but I went from Japan to Germany. I traded sushi for sauerkraut. But so 1948, they actually started. You might want to hit that air actually.
Yeah.
So lots of
yeah.
people in it. So 1940, they started making turntables. They were labeled ELAC, and they were called ELAC mirror chords, and later on ELAC Benjamin mirror chord turntables. And they sold a tremendous amount all over the world, including the U.S. At a given point in time, ELAC, Dual, and Gerard owned 90% of the worldwide turntable market. ELAC was huge in that. ELAC was the manufacturer of the first moving magnet.
Moving magnet stereo cartridge.
Stereo cartridges.
hold the
They made
patents on
that. They actually were selling and manufacturing cartridges for sure during that time frame. So they have a big history in the turntable business. They made those 48 up till the late 70s, early 80s, actually probably early 80s, but they produced things like radios, receivers, amplifiers, a lot of consumer electronics during that time period. As we got into the early 80s, the invention of the CD came about and turntable sales just dropped substantially. So they decided what was going to be the next step for ELAC, and they decided they were going to get in the speaker business. They partnered with Axiom electroacoustic speaker specialists and started building speakers. And they did a bunch. They developed what they call, which is still sold today, it's a newer version, called the 4Pi. It's a super tweeter omnidirectional. Andrew and I have seen it. I don't know, did we listen to it?
No.
I don't think we listened to it, but we're getting some here. So we'll be able to listen to those. And one of their biggest developments, if you look at ELAC now, if you look at what they're known for right now, it's this jet tweeter. I have an example over here that I destroyed accidentally. That's why it's out there now. There's a really strong neo magnet, and if you get a screwdriver anywhere close to it, it flies over and hits the rib part of the ribbon. But they introduced this folded ribbon tweeter, and it's a very unique process when they do this. A lot of other companies do use folded ribbon. Martin Logan, a bunch of other companies. This one literally, when we went to the factory in Germany, there's a woman sitting there, and her job has this really cool little assembly, and she's folding them one by one. They're all handmade. They're actually a very cool process. And they go into another area where they're lined up perfectly and sprayed with a special glue on the one side, and then on the other side.
Yeah.
I can't remember, but it was a pretty.
Because it's all on a Capton former, so you got to kind of kill the sound of the Capton itself. You can't make a pure ribbon as a folded air motion transformer. The current paths aren't correct, so it's got to be on a substrate. And so it's how do you damp the substrate, how do you hold its position in the magnet. So they've developed a lot of techniques through the years to make it better and better and better. And they're on Jet 7.
Jet 5 right now, there's a 6 coming, but there's a Jet 5 tweeter, it's the one they're on now, the revision of it. So even today, that jet tweeter is very well known. So 2008, if you bought a Porsche Panamera with the Burmester audio system, the tweeter array system in that car were jet tweeters. That's what they were. That's done so well that this year in 2015, all the Burmester system Panameras, Cayennes, and 911s all feature it as well. And Bugatti had also chosen for the Veyron car. So it's a very well respected. Porsche comes and visits the factory, watches all the production to make sure it's all done to their standards, and that's the tweeter system they use in those cars. So it's just a very well respected, all this fine attention to detail, which is funny because we were used to the very strict requirements at Pioneer, because Pioneer is a very conservative company. Now we went to a German company where I think their standards are even higher than what we'd expect. So when we got the first set of products gone and they went over there for testing, we're like, okay, what's going to happen?
Yeah, we sent the pre-production over so they could have a listen, and then we start getting all these reports back. We tested for this and tested for this. And then,
oh my gosh! And he's worried about. So I'm worried about things like, well, how did the packaging survive drop tests? Can they throw it against the wall and have it okay? We put it in a chamber at 178 degrees with 100% humidity for 4 days, and the little corner didn't peel. I mean, they do some crazy testing, but they were all glowing stuff. I think they found one little thing and something that on the subwoofer, because they didn't have the final EQ setting that Andrew had said. Once they loaded the EQ setting, then it wasn't an issue anymore. But yeah, so they're well known for doing a lot of great stuff. So currently, they have about 65 different speaker products. Everything from passive speakers, active speakers, wireless speakers, subwoofers, and they do make some custom install. They make in ceiling.
They do have more than just one engineer.
Correct. And on-wall speakers. They make some great on-wall speakers that Andrew really liked. We went out there and listened to them.
Why do they want to enter the American market?
Well, because they want to expand their market. The bulk of their business is done in Europe and Asia. Whenever I would go into like the big camera, Yodobashi camera, which are the big major stores in Japan, they always sell ELAC speakers there. If you go into Saturn, which is like a Best Buy of Germany or Europe, they carry ELAC. So that's who they are today, and they're sold in over 30 countries. From a brand reputation, they do extremely well. almost in every area, every publication, every country they get reviewed in, they always, this is Hi-Fi Choice. I left the ones in here that had English language. Hi-Fi Choice, you can see they were done well. This is Hi-Fi Plus. Once again, beautiful cabinets. I mean, the work over there is crazy. They charge their own magnets. They do all sorts of crazy stuff over there, which is kind of cool, stuff that I hadn't seen before. And if you go to the current ELAC website, which is elac.com, you can go to there and see, this is just one page of all the reviews they get in all the other countries. So you can see the flag represents where it was reviewed, what the product is. You can read and download the review and see it. So they're a very well-respected company.
And we're going to test you on which flag was which country.
Which one's this one?
Did you use ELAC?
I know that one.
What's that?
You use ELAC components on these speakers?
These ones, no. Everything here was designed by us. So at this price point, the products are not made by them. They're all certified and they're gone through. Because they're at these price points, to make the product in Germany would be astronomically expensive. So these are actually manufactured in China, designed here, manufactured in China, but they're sold everywhere. So they're selling these all over Europe, Japan, Australia. Andrew's headed to London next month to demonstrate them at the one of the big London high-end shows. So they'll be sold everywhere when they launch. As we move up in price, we will start utilizing the manufacturing capabilities of them because now we can afford to do that. But they don't sell at these price points currently. It just couldn't be done.
And Andrew designed the components?
Absolutely. All the drivers. So Andrew uses, I'm talking for you and you're standing right here. Another thing I do for Andrew is talk for him. But no,
He's tired of listening to my voice, so he kind of takes over when he
He's
can.
got to translate from English to American.
And tell things.
Except when it comes to grammar.
I knew that was going to happen. Anybody follows, if you're unfortunate to follow me on Facebook, I found this phenomenal, great Pioneer CD, but one of the very first CD players I ever made last week in a swap meet called a PD-70. And it's 40 pounds, it's beautiful, it's silver, and I put, it works perfect.
Uh-oh.
And he goes, and I know, and here comes in, he goes,
It works better than your grammar.
So I'm running it all through all these online grammar tricks. It's fine. He goes, well, here's a bunch of sites that says it's wrong. And we're going back and forth, and everybody's enjoying
It is in
themselves.
fact a flat adverb, which was all right for Shakespeare and as late as Emily Bronte, but then fell out of fashion, except in America.
But I'm a big fan of Shakespeare, so it was correct to be Shakespeare before they decided to correct it. We've gone back and forth a bunch on this. But yeah, so I was trying to figure out, I got side note on the CD player. It's a phenomenal CD. And it worked, 1984, and it worked out of the box. It's amazing. So why are we here? This would be like why I would be here sitting in front of a buyer for a retail store. But, the brand is relatively unknown in the US. Unless you're a big turntable enthusiast in the 70s and the 60s, you probably weren't familiar with the brand. So myself, Andrew, and Jim, we've been tasked to relaunch the ELAC brand, give it a fresh perspective in this country. And that was going to be done through offering products that offered great price performance ratio, that were affordable to a larger group of consumers than would be there, and slowly start building the brand. But we're going to do the branding not just ELAC, and we'll see some of this. So how are we going to do this? Well, first of all, that's not going to work. It's just not. So we have a new tagline, and you saw it as you walked in, ELAC, the life of sound. So it's very similar. Let me
Scott's
make
here.
Oh, Scott's here.
Yeah.
Hello?
Just so you know, like I said at Newport Beach, since these are all audiophiles, I was wanting to put ELAC, get a life. Not going down so well.
Did you also design the cabinets, Andrew?
Yes, so everything, when we come through to that point, we'll explain exactly what I've been doing, but literally everything is built from the ground up. I've determined every part of the drivers and developed all of those. We've designed the cabinets, we've done everything. So there's nothing off the shelf. They're just on the shelf speakers. Some of my jokes work, sometimes they don't. And that was the point, that what I'd done with the Pioneer speakers was just... I was doing an interview with Robert Harley a while ago, and as part of the interview of what was my history, I'd realised that I had never, in my career designing speakers, ever used someone else's existing drivers to incorporate into a speaker. I'd always been fortunate enough to work with companies that design and manufacture in-house all their own drivers, Kef, Infinity, Pioneer, and now what we're doing here. So that gives me a good perspective on how to get the performance
Oh, no, it's one
level
back there.
that I want at the price point I want. Because you always be disadvantaged if you're just trying to buy something pre-existing from another manufacturer, and then further disadvantaged if you ask them to make a specific change to it just for a small number for your production run. So being able to have the experience of knowing how to design drivers, having the capacity to do that and design them means you can meet those performance parameters.
And we do run into challenges with, even when he gives directions to do stuff. We literally, when we were doing the final driver design for the woofers for these, it literally came down to the fact, okay, and you're getting on a plane and flying to China like 2 days from now. And we literally rebought all the measuring equipment that he uses here so we could fly it out there, set it up for him, do all the measurements, show him what he's expecting, leave it there, train him how to use it, and then come back. And now when they take measurements, we know that they're done the same way that he would do them. So we do a lot of things to make sure that a little cost up front, but would simplify things as we move forward. So, and we've used that manufacturer before, and they've been very very good with us. So we're happy with those folks.
Do they manufacture for other electronics?
They do. They do for a lot of different companies, actually. A lot of different companies. Yeah, they do a lot. So they're very good at it. And the other branding, you'll see this branding on all the products that are going to be shipping that are part of the debut series. Is the ELAC Debut by Andrew Johns. One of the things that got asked a
Gonna be
lot.
presented by Chris Walker.
No, I like you. That would be great. I mean, yeah. That would be parts. That was just who Andrew is. I think you guys know who he is. So part of the goals of the line was to literally develop lines of speakers ranging from the entry level all the way to the flagship, and that's what we plan on doing. There's actually a model here, and I'll bring it in here in a minute, that's actually less expensive than a B5. It's a B4. We haven't built it yet.
But it comes after.
It comes after. Yes, I know.
Confusing.
It's confusing, Andrew. But yeah, we're thinking we're going to do something, and maybe for a specific retailer or not, but we did make, the Pioneer was a 4-inch driver. We wanted to make something that was more affordable even than this, so we are looking at doing that. And I actually have one in the other room. It looks just like that, but smaller. All models will offer price performance exceeding their price points, performance exceeding the price. All key speaker components will be custom made, not using any off-the-shelf components. All speaker products will be 100% designed by Andrew here in this facility. And for those that are interested afterward, we can go in the back, you can see how he measures and what he does, and we have that, there's a measure room behind here, without an anechoic chamber, because I'm cheap. And the goal is to bring brand awareness to a larger group of consumers.
Product line.
Okay, there we go. That was like a 2-year plan of everything, sorry.
Memorize.
So the key technologies that are going to go on this one is we're going to use aramid fiber cones, a custom deep tweeter waveguide. I still haven't changed the picture of the waveguide, but it still has the screw in it. Superior build quality, custom designed drivers, and sophisticated crossover design. The crossover is even more complex than it was in previous models that Andrew's done, as far as more components. So aramid fiber, you can explain why we use aramid fiber.
So, when you're designing a driver, you've got two choices philosophically in how you design a base mid-range driver.
There is
One ideal is that the cone is, hey,
Sorry to be late.
You go.
Thank you, sorry for ELAC.
Oh, thank you.
Oh,
You sure?
Remember, that's a broken right arm, so be careful.
Oh, okay.
Not you.
Hey, everybody.
So when you're designing the cones, you've got two potential approaches. One theoretical ideal of the perfect piston. So all the surface of the cone moves uniformly at all frequencies. Well, you can't approach perfection. It'll start breaking up at some frequency. But the materials that you use to try and get the perfect piston, you start with metals, all the way up to beryllium like I did with the TAD speakers. But mostly with typical sizes of cones with aluminum type materials, they'll still break up in a frequency range that is either almost within the passband that you want to use it at, or only just outside of the passband, and that brings problems in giving the cone a signature sound. If you don't go to that ideal, you're going to go for something that will be stiff at low frequencies, gradually flex at the mid-range and higher frequencies, and that flexing will gradually reduce the effective radiating area of the cone, so the outer edge of the cone becomes decoupled, and only the centre part radiates, and then your job is how to control that flexing behaviour. You're going to be working through the resonant modes, but you're going to damp them and control them in the best manner that you can. So when you start looking at materials like that, originally it was Bextreme. Your paper tries to be stiff, but isn't quite stiff enough, so it can be good, but it's almost the wrong combination of parameters. It's neither one or the other. Bextreme came out, then polypropylene, and then more later materials like carbon fibres, glass fibres, and aramid fibres, trademark Kevlar from DuPont.
Just go.
That's
Uh,
exactly what we're doing.
It's funny, we just realized the thermostat, it gets to 70, but it won't turn back on until it gets to 71 again. So they're out heating up the thermostat to get the air conditioner. To make sure it stays within the building.
Yeah, all the hot air is being produced in here.
You can explain hysteresis to him.
We use, in this instance, aramid fibre, because having the woven cloth, if you don't dope it with the right resins, is actually just like cloth. It has no stiffness as a cone. You know, aramid fibres have got great tensile strength, but you wave them on into a cloth and drive them in the middle, it's just hollow. So it's the binders that you use that control the characteristics, but the action of the fibres in the binder gives it the damping characteristics. So you've got lots of ways of controlling the cone behaviour by using the right combination of weave and fibre diameters and bonding agents. So it gives you a bit more flexibility in the design process. So then we come to the tweeter. So the other thing I've done with the bass drivers, over and above what I did with the BS22s, one of the problems you face with bass drivers is you're pumping a lot of power, because it's not just a bass driver, it's a bass mid-range driver. So it's taking probably 80% of the power that's going into the speaker. And the voice coil is going to heat up. And unfortunately, copper has a thermal coefficient. As it heats up, its resistance rises. And so it tries to draw less current. And if that characteristic were perfect, it could never destroy itself, because you try and put more power in, but it's just not drawing anymore. It doesn't work quite that well, but what it does do, it heats up, and the instantaneous temperature of the voice coil can reach over 250 degrees centigrade, 300 or 400 degrees Fahrenheit, at which point the voice coil resistance has doubled. And the problem with this, it's dependent on the past history of the music you've been playing. And there's a time to build up to that temperature, and then there's a time constant for it to cool down. So play some loud music, temperature goes up, voice coil resistance goes up, sensitivity of the driver drops, and the frequency response changes, and the loading on the crossover network changes, because it's designed to work into, say, a 4 ohm, not an 8 ohm load. So everything changes. And then you get a quiet music passage. For the next 10 to 15 seconds, continually the sound is changing as it's cooling down. So you get tonality changes, you get dynamic presentation changes, and a compression effect if you're trying to play really loud. So you solve that by either making the drive unit very efficient, or you do it by being able to absorb enough power without heating up too much. Well, you can't make a bass driver more efficient than it needs to be, in the sense that if you want to get the correct bass loading at low frequencies in that cabinet, there's only one efficiency level it can really be for that bass alignment. If you put more magnet on to get more mid-band efficiency, you actually get less sensitivity at the low frequencies. So it kind of skews the balance that way. So there's an optimum alignment that you need. So you have to solve the problem instead by making the voice coil take more temperature without heating up so much, which means a bigger voice coil. So I've gone to 1.5" diameter voice coil instead of inch, and that gives me much better power handling capability. Now when we come to the tweeter, we don't have those constraints of sensitivity. We can pile on as much magnet as we can afford, or as much magnet as will just fit through its own hole. And in both of these, it just turns out that the magnet is as big as it will fit through its own hole, which is a big advantage to the design. Now, what I'm talked about often is when we're designing at this price level, there's two things we're trying to do. Spend within the budget, which is Chris's control. That's the time we don't like each other, because I'm trying to spend and he's trying to stop me. And
The speakers actually are more expensive than I wanted them to be. They actually are. Yet they're still a bargain, but they're still more expensive than I wanted them to be.
we'll take this outside later. But so what I've got to examine is every single part that's going to cost me money, and decide how much I'm going to spend on this part versus that part. It's how do you spend your compromises? Because of course every design approach is a compromise. It's how you take all these different parts and put them together to get the best overall performance. So should I spend money on the cabinet, or cross bracing, or better component quality in the crossover, or more components in the crossover, or so on. Other parts you get for free. Now in developing the tweeter, again, I maximise the efficiency. So, because tweeters have, in reality, very poor power handling capability. If you ran a sine wave through a tweeter at around 10 watts, you'd destroy pretty much most tweeters. They heat up too much. But luckily, music doesn't have much energy density in the range above 3K. It has high peak levels, but the average level is very low. But also, you can do whatever you want, get as much magnet and sensitivity out of the tweeter, and then pad it down into crossover, and that works to give you much more better dynamics out of the tweeter. So I spend money on the right kind of magnet. I've got a new dome profile, new dome material. I've changed the pole piece and hollowed it out so I can get more damping material behind the dome. I've optimized the top plate thickness, particularly when you're working on speakers at this price point. They're going to be manufactured to a price point, and you're going to be making lots of them. So you want to be very careful in your design process about building in reproducibility, taking out factors that could cause variations in manufacture. And so very often you find the approach to maximizing tweeter sensitivity, since the belief is that, a tweeter doesn't need to move very much. In a bass drive, you have a much longer coil than you have the magnet gap, so you've got lots of linear movement. In a tweeter, it moves almost imperceptibly when you take it to crossover point around 2 to 3K. So a lot of design approach take a voice coil length that's almost the same length as the magnet gap to maximize the usage of the energy within the magnet. That's great, till you come to production and you realize there's tolerances in where the coil is set, what we call the build height. When you put it all together, does it actually sit centrally within the gap? Because if it doesn't, if it moves even 0.5 millimeter outside of the gap, you could lose a dB of apparent sensitivity. So you're building in production variability by doing that. So I built it out. I maximized the efficiency as much as I can, whilst also taking care of production tolerance issues. But the other thing I've done, I always try and put a tweeter into a waveguide to.
I just want to point out, 11 minutes into the slide, you now talked about the wave.
I'm just saying.
At this point, we can get through 2 more slides tonight.
You can go.
You're always supposed to chop the dollars, not the time.
So we really do like each other. So yes, so I always put it into a waveguide. That helps control the directivity to match its off-axis performance to the bass driver, so I get much more consistent off-axis performance than I would. Mine isn't. I'm doing fine. I'll point out that's Chris's, so it's Chris's battery that's really bad. So I built a waveguide for it, but in the original design, as you can mostly see still, the construction normally you have the magnet system on the top plate, and you on this face plate or waveguide you'll have holes so you can secure the mounting plate to the magnet assembly with 4 screws. Pretty universal. It makes it that you can take it apart if you've got any problems or crap in the gap. It's always serviceable. But I was doing my development and I was measuring it, and I was noticing this dip that I was getting at 10k in the frequency response, and trying to track it down. So I took my waveguide and I started putting tweeters I'd developed in earlier lives that I know the performance of, and I put them in and match them into the waveguide and measure those, because I knew those didn't have a dip at 10k. I put them in and dip at 10k. How can this be? What's going on? And then one tweeter that I put in was just a small neodymium magnet, so I couldn't actually screw it into here. So I literally just got blue masking tape and wrapped it around and held it in place and measured it. And so I didn't need the screws, and I measured it, and the dip was even worse. I know this tweeter doesn't have a dip at 10k. Then I realised, oh wait, I got acoustic resonators. The cavities act as like quarter wave stubs. So I taped them over, all my problems went away, no dip. So I thought, okay, we're now going to have to change the construction and come up with a construction method that is not so serviceable, but eliminates the need for screw holes. And because I could have put in little rubber bungs to fill in, but that would have cost money. So it was easier just to build it this way. Yeah.
You needed a cabinet for it, so it had to go cabinet or bumps. Build quality. So this is just an exploded view of the B5 speaker, showing all the components that go inside of it, how everything's mounted. Crossovers mounted to the back of the speaker terminals. We have examples of the crossovers out there. Early examples, Andrew will point out the coils are facing the same direction on that one. And then we actually show, that is the tweeter that Andrew designed, obviously without the screw holes. But that is an exploded view of the tweeter and all the parts of it. One of the things that I was really adamant about, that I hated about any other speakers we ever did, is you could always see screw holes in the front, where everything, you could see how everything was mounted. And I looked at what other companies have done out there, and I won't name them. But when you go from this price up like $75, the difference in the speaker is trim pieces to cover up all of the screws. And I'm like, it can't be that much. Now, molding plastic and paying for tools is not cheap. There's no doubt about that. And I think every speaker needed its own tool, the way that we did this, which was not the best way. But it costs more money, but I think it makes it it gives it a nice look. The goal is to have the speaker look as nice with the grill off as it did with the grill on, stand out on a show floor. But if you don't want the trim piece, you can snap the grill out of it. I hate holes in the speakers for grills. So we put grill pins on it. So there were no holes, just cosmetic things. The woofer, there's the woofer that Andrew did as well, showing how it all goes together. Like I said, everything's custom. And then we actually have the individual models. I think you guys know most of this. The B5 and the B6 are the first models showing up. Those are the ones showing up on the 25th. So those will be take a couple of days to clear customs, and they go to, I get loaded on trucks, go to the warehouse, get them loaded, scanned in, and then they start processing. So if anybody pre-ordered them, they'll start shipping out like October 1st or something like that, I think is the day they'll start shipping out. And that's $229 a pair, 5¼ inch woofer, 1-inch tweeter. Sound great.
You've got 8 element crossover.
Actually, it was 6. You're at 7.
7.
Yeah,
Oh,
you're
so
7 now. I updated the deck.
Okay.
This is literally, I'm actually finalizing the carton artwork, right? Going through it, and I go, how many parts are on the floor standard? Because if you guys looked on the website, the floor standards are listed as 2.5-way speakers, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not anymore. And
So
I
come up with
discovered
a really
this
cool
late.
way to make it a three-way.
So now they're truly three-way speakers. So the true three-way floor standards, the price, well, the consumer's price didn't change. My price changed because we went from 8 components to 10 components on the crossover. And there's an example of that out there. So 229 pair for the B5s. There is the B6, which is the 6.5-inch version. So more efficient, more output, and a little better bass extension at 279.
What is the efficiency of the B5?
These are 87.
85 for
For the
these,
B5s.
and about 86.5 for these.
Yeah.
86, 87.
So they're not as efficient as a lot of other speakers out there, but bass is normally compromised when efficiency goes up, is what Andrew has
Yeah,
taught.
you can't have everything. So what I try and do is make sure that the speakers are reasonably full range, so that when you're listening to them, especially for music in a starter system, you don't feel, oh, I'm missing all the bass, I need a subwoofer. And so you have to compromise efficiency with that. But power is cheap these days, relatively, so.
Yeah, and it's one of these things where, you know, it seems funny, but it's actually a big deal if your speaker's not as efficient as your competition. And it may not be a big deal when a customer gets it in his home, but if you walk into a retail store and they have all the speakers on a switcher, they're gonna be loud, loud, not as loud, then loud, loud. And they go, well, this one plays louder than this one. Well, that's
Therefore,
not
it
true.
Must be better.
Correct, and it's not true. You just turn the volume up a little bit more, and now it's just as loud as the other one. But believe it or not, those are things that are, at least I think about. I don't know if Andrew does, but I think about. But that part of the reason the 85 dB on the speakers, but you guys, most of you have heard the amount of bass we get it. We're not going to do the demos. We're going to cycle people out so we can seat just the 8 people in here when we start doing the demos. We have the
What kind of power do you need for the B5 and B6?
pretty much anything.
50 watts.
Do you know the little Class T amplifier they sell on Amazon, those little tiny boxes? I've powered a pair of B5s with that at pretty moderate levels and at a pinch, and it seems to work great. The C5 is the center channel, which is right here. These are 179H, which is 2 of the 5 1/4. They're both active with the same tweeter all the way around. We have the F5, which are the floor standards, which are actually hooked up now to this system, which you guys will be able to hear today, which we've never publicly demonstrated before. I think I made it a 3-way on there. I don't know if I did or not. But I did upgrade 10 element crossover at 279 each. We didn't announce, so I mentioned earlier there was a smaller bookshelf. There'll actually be a larger tower. I think it might be out there too, called an F6 that we'll announce here shortly as well. So it's bigger cabinet, 3 6.5-inch woofers, 3-way as well. And the price is $349 each for the 6.5s.
Is that the one with the folded tweeter out there?
No, it's actually, you know, I think it's out there along the wall, and if you open up, there is no tweeter in it because it got damaged in shipping. But we can take a look at that. And then the A4, which is the Atmos add-on speakers. These were just certified by Dolby and for DTS, so these will be Dolby Atmos certified, and they'll be certified for use with DTS-X as well. They do one of the speaker configurations they will support is the bounce off the ceiling as well. Those are 229.
And it'll go on top of the floor standard?
Yeah, they fit perfect on an F5, and we actually have, or the B5. On the F6 and the B6, they sit a little inset, but still look very nice. They will not fit properly onto the 4-inch one that we talked about. They'll overhang that, but we would have had to make it smaller and compromise the performance of this in order to get it to fit on there, and it just didn't make sense.
There were some questions in the forum as to whether those could be mounted directly on the ceiling as Atmos speakers.
Yeah, they shouldn't be. I mean, if you're going to use something in the ceiling, you definitely should use in-ceiling speakers. And there's a bunch of companies that are looking at making wider dispersion ceilings. As part of the advantage of having the reflective type system is you've got the sound that's going to diffuse it all. It gives it this big diffuse sound that you would get to. When you go to a movie theater and watch Atmos, the speaker's 30 feet above your head. You're not getting this direct located sound. You're getting a very wide dispersed sound coming off of those speakers. And a lot of in-ceilings, especially in a lot of homes, you have 8-foot ceilings, that speaker may be sitting 4 feet above your head. And if you can imagine, that's not done that way. So I think you're going to see a whole slew of new in-ceiling speakers designed specifically for that application.
And in fact, the Dolby spec requires opposite considerations for the directivity of the speakers for either the Atmos bounced version or the in-ceiling.
Correct.
You want to specifically restricted directivity for the bounced version, but for the in-ceiling you want wide directivity. So you can't just take an Atmos add-on upward firing module and kind of put it into the ceiling. So it's a
Yeah, and we've talked, and Mandar's got some unique ideas on how to, a lot of people in their own theater, they end up having their front speakers, and then for rear speakers, their sofa's up against the back wall, and you have to go in ceiling. There really isn't a good option for doing something. He's got an idea up his sleeve that you could actually do something that would work to give you the bounce and a rear speaker in the same configuration.
Don't the up-firing speakers have the little notch also for the?
Yes, they do.
Yeah, they do. That's part of the Dolby spec.
Another reason.
Andrew, you're known for loving coaxial speakers. I noticed that the Atmos speaker there
Is it coaxial?
looks like
It is. Yeah.
It is. It is actually as a concentric driver.
Yeah.
It's a 4-inch driver with a 3/4 inch or ½ inch?
Half inch.
A ½ inch tweeter.
Because I couldn't bring myself to do a full range driver. You put those in clock radios. So I wanted to do something better. It's not the pushing the boundaries of what can be done with a concentric driver, but it is pushing to get a better performance out of a small driver to meet the Dolby specs, particularly that.
Correct. You have to remember all AV receivers or processors that do Atmos, the frequency response output of the Atmos upper firing is 180 hertz and out. So there is nothing below that region. So you don't have to have a giant speaker in order to reproduce it. What was the question you had?
So you almost need to tune the directivity of the speaker if you don't have a standard ceiling height.
Yeah, if you don't have a, well, I guess if you have you mean for an in-ceiling speaker?
For either case, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, for Dolby Atmos, they recommend between 8 and 12 feet. We've used it in taller, we've used it in less, and you still get the effect, but the optimum effect is between 8 and 12 feet. It's funny, one of the things we found it's very, in my home I have vaulted ceilings, so I've got this back that comes up like this, and that's gonna come up and probably do, wreak a lot of havoc, and I can't really use it. And when I have in-ceiling speakers, if I can't angle anything, it might be an havoc. So I have an Atmos receiver, I don't have Atmos surround speakers. I actually am a 5.1 in-wall guy now.
Because of the vaulted
Because of my
ceiling?
lovely wife out in the lobby.
You couldn't do Atmos because of your vaulted ceiling?
Yeah, because we're not the reflecting type. I can put in ceiling speakers, especially one of those things that have a pivoting tweeter, but I think the pivoting tweeter thing doesn't really do much, does it?
No.
No, I didn't think so. It really doesn't have any effect, the pivoting tweeter.
There are
But,
Have you been to the Segerstrom Hall down in?
Oh, yeah, of course.
You see what they drop a reflector over the?
No, I haven't noticed
Yeah.
that. We've seen a few things there.
This
and I
is
haven't.
in the Renee and Henry, the one,
Okay.
The
the one with
waving
the
one,
curvy front.
the glass front one.
I wouldn't even know which one we went to.
They're-
My wife
they're-
did.
they're- Everything there is called Segerstrom.
Yeah.
But the Renee and Henry Segerstrom Hall is the one that's got a glass wavy front,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where all the Philharmonic plays.
Oh, and they bring they have a reflector.
They have, well, the whole hall is tuned.
It's a
Have you
beautifully
been
tuned-
there?
I haven't been to that
Oh,
one.
That's where,
You'd
You
like
gotta
it.
see it. The-
that's where Diana Krall and Chris Botti
Yeah.
was playing a couple weeks
The
ago.
whole hall can be
Gorgeous.
changed, they push a button and panels
Yeah.
change and.
Oh, cool.
See, the problem is this is the deep south for me. I'm kind of, just like you've experienced, it takes a long time and the wrong time of day to get down here.
But
So
anyway, they do have reflectors.
I thought of something completely different when you said deep south, and I was like, really? I haven't been in southern United States. If you think this is the deep south, you're in for a treat sometime.
This is the deep south of LA.
It's so
But
well
they do have reflectors that are dropped down, and the whole hall has been tuned
It's lovely.
phenomenally.
We saw Phantom there. No, we saw Phantom at.
Phantom
We've
is-
seen a couple there.
But
I can't
that,
remember.
At the other hall.
the Broadway shows are at the other
At the,
hall.
at the original.
That's the one I saw.
Yeah.
Those are the ones I've been to. So I haven't been to a music.
But you should,
You
you
should
should
go
get a
just to
tour
hear
of
it.
the
Right.
place. It's
Cool.
There are a lot of upside down houses,
Mhm.
so the vaulted ceiling construction, especially along the
Absolutely.
beach, is a
No,
problem
I know,
for
it
them.
is a problem for doing Atmos, there's no doubt about that, and, I know DTS says it's more flexible because it adopts all these things, but, I mean, they both work great, in the correct environments, there's no doubt about that, you have to have the correct environment to use it. But like I said, it's been very forgiving in all the instances. One of the best examples we ever had was at CEDIA last year, and we literally had a put together prefab sound room, and it sounded remarkable. It was the best sound we ever got out of an Atmos system, and we literally replaced acoustic ceiling tiles. We lifted them up and slid a little sheet of plastic in, and then put the ceiling tile back as the reflection points, and it worked amazingly well. So
before you go on to the subwoofer,
Yeah.
which is next, one point we haven't mentioned is that they're square boxes or rectangular boxes, as opposed to what we were doing before with the curved side panels. And that was another instance of where do I spend my money? Because the curved side panels added style, and certainly made them stand out on the shelf at the price points that we did for the BS21 and BS22. Nothing else on the shelf looked like that, so people buy with their eyes first very often. And curved side panels can have a degree of performance advantage. Like for like, a curved panel is stiffer than a flat panel. So when you build a speaker cabinet, you get some advantage. It does move the resonant frequencies of the panels higher. But if you look at it very carefully, it only moves them a bit higher. It doesn't eliminate them. And in terms of standing waves inside of the box, it does nothing. It damping controls standing waves inside the box. So you got some advantage and a big disadvantage: cost and building it. You can't do a V-groove panel and wrap it round that's pre-coated with the vinyl. So you got a much more complex process of putting it together, and then you got to hand apply the vinyl. Now, if you were doing a high-end speaker hand applying veneer, that's fine, but we were talking about a $130 speaker. So I looked at it and decided, well, since it's just giving a different flavour of resonance as opposed to eliminating them, is that the best way to spend the money on these speakers? And if you look at entry-level or lower price speakers throughout Europe, most of them
Or square.
the style is rectangular.
Square, yeah.
So we thought, well, we want to sell these obviously throughout Europe as well, and let's go for a simpler box construction, but make sure we use the right combination of materials and bracing to give us the performance level that I need, but at a cost that enables me to spend the money on extra crossover components and better cone materials and bigger magnets. So that was one of those factors where, how should I spend my money and how do I balance the compromises?
Did you used a deeper waveguide to
And I
minimize
used a deeper waveguide.
to minimize cabinet edge diffraction?
Yes, if you look at diffraction, and if you run design simulations, computer simulations on diffraction, as you take a sound radiator on a certain size cabinet, as you start shrinking it, the ripples get worse and worse. So tweeters always look worse than bass drivers, for example. So how do you solve that? Well, what you want is the wavefront to have grown bigger by the time it gets to the surface of the cabinet. And so it's going to effectively not be diffracted as badly as if it's a small sound source.
The edge will be smaller compared to the size of the wave.
Yeah. So that's what I did, a deeper waveguide. And it also get me a bit better directivity control. So I was able to match it to the bass driver.
Wait till they see your green eyeball in the back. Green eyeball is something special. So the subwoofers. So one of the things that we wanted to do is, literally the amplifier technology in the subwoofers, we're using Bash. When it comes to amplifier technology for subwoofers, the traditionals are Class AB, which is known for higher quality, and then Class D, which is known for efficiency. The Bash amplification that we're using for the subwoofers is kind of a combination of both. It is a Class AB amplifier, but it's driven by a power supply that operates like Class D. It actually delivers power on demand as necessary. So it looks at the incoming signal and says, hey, I'm going to have a really loud pass through, I need a ton of power. It gives it to it. It says, coming up, there's nothing, and it backs off the power. So we get an amplifier that's running it up to 90% efficiency and delivers the power when needed. And it's the amplifier that we decided to go with for this because of that benefit. It allows us to meet Energy Star requirements for a subwoofer and still deliver 1,000 watts worth of peak power out of the 12-inch subwoofer, which is kind of a big deal. There's a lot of text there, and I just simplified that. But we use Bash amplifiers in our in all three subwoofers. We have three different subwoofers. We have a traditional one, which is out there in the hall called the S10, which is a $250. It's a 100-watt RMS amplifier. One of the things I hate are peak power ratings, yet they're all over our literature and our website. And the only reason I do this is because every one of our competitors does it. Now, what I do is we measure it. It's double what it usually is. I don't quadruple like some people do, because I think that's a little bit iffy. But some people quadruple the continuous to the peak. But this is a good woofer. It's a 100-watt amplifier, 200-watt peak. It's a 10-inch subwoofer. The long throw, good sized magnet. It's 100-volt, 240, because we had to design everything we were going to do that could be sold worldwide. And it's a traditional subwoofer. It cosmetically matches the rest of the lineup. It has a nice The port tube here is dual flared on both sides, and it actually has the same cosmetic color as the trim pieces, so it cosmetic matches, rubber feet on it, and it looks nice. But it's a traditional. On the back of it, you'll see phase adjustment, volume, crossover frequency, power on, off, and auto. But basic subwoofer capability, but a very good one compared to some of the stuff we've done in the past.
And then it doesn't matter I guess because you did it, it doesn't matter that the amp in the sub is class D, but the amp that may be driving the other speakers is AB.
So this is actually a class AB amplifier.
Oh.
So Bash, what it does is,
Yeah.
the reason an amplifier is inefficient is that there's a constant power supply voltage being applied to the output devices all the time, no matter what output power you need to deliver. So the difference when you've got current flowing but not so much voltage, if you've got low impedance load, for example, what's left is all dissipated in the output devices of the amplifier. So you need large heat sinks, you need good capability from the output devices themselves, and so you're wasting a lot of power. So what Class D does is just switch between the rails all the time. So the output devices are either fully on or fully off. So it operates efficiently, and the average of the on-off switch time is the signal. So it's actually a linear amplifier. People, when they talk about Class D, they say digital amplifiers. It's not digital, it's sampled analog. But
That was just the
it
next
is
letter.
a linear process in converting the signal to the speakers. But the problem with Class D is, especially, not so much for a subwoofer, but if you're going to do a wide range amplifier, for example, you've got very high switching speeds, very high frequencies radiating around all your sensitive electronics. So it can be difficult to control that process, right? It's taken a long time to get Class D amplifiers to sound good. They've been fine for subwoofers, but it's taken a bit longer for wide range amplifiers. So Bash is slightly different. It recognises that you don't need all that voltage across the output devices. You only need it sufficiently higher than the actual signal level. So it uses, let's say, another amplifier to drive the amplifier. And that amplifier is a Class D amplifier. It's a switching power supply, which is modulated to have just enough voltage to allow the output devices to operate with the signal level you need to put out. So there's only a constant about 5 to 10 volts across the output devices, not as much as 40 volts. So it runs at an efficiency level that approaches Class D, not as high as Class D, but practically elite.
You realized earlier you said aluminum like 3 times. And it is aluminium, as you correctly. Go ahead.
So it runs at a sufficiently high efficiency level that with music signals, it's the amount of heat dissipation you get if you compared on music, Class D versus Class or Bash, there'd be very little difference. So it gives us the performance advantage of a traditional Class AB amplifier in terms of sound, but with an efficiency level approaching Class D.
That's exactly what I just said. I'm pretty sure.
So did you design the amplifiers too?
No,
or-
no. It was actually designed from a company a long time ago called Indigo. That was used for certain applications. It has been revised a number of times and revised again for this process.
So if there's a port on this side and the amp is on the other side,
The amp's on the back.
so that means the driver is on the bottom.
Yes. Correct. But it does kind of do this. The port, right, on the S10? The port's angled because of the back of the driver.
Yes, you've always got.
It is kind of funny.
You got, and this will lead into what the next one is. The problem with vented boxes is that once you start driving to high level, you get a lot of airflow through the vent, and as the airflow exceeds a certain velocity, it starts becoming turbulent. You know, sort of noises, chuffing noises.
Port noise.
So the way to fix that is to reduce air velocity, which means you have to have a larger diameter vent. But to maintain tuning frequency, as you increase the vent diameter, you have to make it longer, and it starts not to quite fit in the box. So we angled it a bit to get the last ounce of length in that
And to
size
avoid hitting
box.
the back of the amplifier.
But at some point, you've got as long a vent as you can into that box. If you start putting bends in the vent, you get the chuffing back again. So we've done what we can. the next step to eliminating it is so
No, passive radiator.
passive radiator. So you've got two choices: closed box or passive radiator. Now,
So, let me just,
yes.
so one of the things that we did, so the last subwoofer we did in our previous careers were sealed subwoofers. And they were reviewed as being spectacular for music, but not the best for movies, because they didn't have that big for being sealed. A passive radiator is the perfect in between there. You get the benefit of almost having a port by getting more output and the big sound you want, but you also get the benefit of not having chuffing because of this.
yeah, so when you do a closed box, especially when it's equalized, you can equalize them to have the same frequency response. Let's say small signal conditions. You measure it to a few watts output level, and you can equalize it to have whatever frequency response that you want, to go down as low as you want. But as you start driving in level, you're going to reach a limit in what it can reproduce at low frequencies because it can't move far enough. Now, vented boxes and passive radiators, what that does is put a load from the passive radiator, an acoustic load onto the back of the drive unit, such that at a certain frequency, there's such a high load impedance on the back of the drive unit virtually stops moving. It's now very well matched into the acoustic volume inside the cabinet, and only the vent moves the air or the passive radiator moves the air. So now you've got a condition where over some range of frequencies, the drive unit is not having to move very far. So if you can put enough power in, you can get much greater output capability from the vented box or the passive radiator. But vented box, as we said, is ultimately limited by the airflow through the vent. Passive radiator is not. So the passive radiator is basically a drive unit without the magnet on it, with a certain mass to tune it to the right frequency. And the limit in linear output of a regular drive unit is due to the length of the voice coil compared to the magnet gap. It's not the suspension that limits how far it can move linearly, it's how much overhang you've got of coil to magnet. If you just take the magnet off and say this is now a passive radiator, even though it's got the same area, it can move further than the drive unit would have been able to linearly, because it's just driven by the air within the box. So what we've done is put the same size passive radiator as the active drive unit. But because it can move further linearly, it gives enough output capability. When the drive unit stops moving, passive radiator takes over, we can get a lot of output capability from it. And the other advantage we have with the bash amplifier, because it is efficient, what we can do is say, normally the limitation at some frequency ranges, you can't put enough voltage into the amplifier because the impedance is high. You know, the impedance of a loudspeaker is not constant. It's a curve in a vented system that looks like this. And especially at the low frequency, where the impedance goes high, you can't drive enough power in because you're limited in how much voltage you've got. With the bash amplifier, since that all comes for free, we can have a much higher voltage level than we would normally be able to get away with, and allow us to drive more power into the speaker at that impedance peak and get more output level. So that and the 12-inch version is a good way of getting output capability from the subwoofer.
So yeah, as Andrew mentioned, we have the S10 EQ, which is the 10-inch active and the 10-inch passive, a 200-watt continuous 400-watt peak output amplifier. And then we have the 12-inch, which is a 12-inch passive, 12-inch active, with a 500-watt, 1,000-watt peak output amplifier, which are these two here. Subwoofer, the most interesting thing about these subwoofers is that obviously they deliver great performance, that they contain a DSP, so Andrew can tune them more efficiently and have much wider range and more tuning capability you can have. But the other part is we added a Bluetooth low energy module, which allows us to have control. The one thing about these subwoofers, if you do not own a iPhone or an Android device, you can't control the subwoofers. They do require a Bluetooth connection to control.
And he does not own an iPhone device. Just to
I do not actually.
Out of control, everywhere.
Now this sometimes poses a problem, but most of the time, most people do have one of these devices, and it is used for setup, and it is only used for setup, so it's not used something on a regular basis. There is an option, and our folks in Germany have a model that does have analog controls as well, but it requires a substantial cost to be able to know where everything's at, to convert the analog movements back into digital. There's a bunch of cost added onto that, which is the reason we did not do it. Most of the people don't seem to have a problem. There's a couple that do, and those people will buy another subwoofer, and that's okay. But we do make it very clear it's necessary. But with that technology, the ability to have a communication link, and especially with Bluetooth Low Energy, there's no pairing necessary. You can launch the app, you see it, click on it, you're controlling it. I have full control. I can walk outside and still control it. I don't know why the range is so good, to be honest, but it just happens to be very good. But I have full control, so I have my...
But you can have fun. You can have, you can be playing the music, and then someone outside the room can start messing around with it. I sometimes do that with TiVo at home. It's networked, and so I can be in the kitchen and I'm listening out for the sound of the TV in the bedroom. Then I'll just do a quick rewind, and then and rewind again. And, what's happening?
I was traveling somewhere, and one of my wife's favorite songs was at home, and I knew she was at home, and I was in Japan, but I can actually talk to my AV equipment using Control4 system, so I started playing her favorite song knowing she was home. I thought she'd think it was cute. It scared the hell out of me. The equipment came on and this music started playing in the living room, because I think we had the time wrong, right? It was kind of a funny story. Exactly. It was not good. So we get this wonderful app control that allows us to control the subwoofer. But along with that, we now have full DSP control. And we've added some really cool functionality that allows you not only to adjust the subwoofer, but a good way of integrating the subwoofer in a room that's normally not found in subwoofers at this price point. One of the most difficult things to do is to properly integrate a subwoofer into your room environment. The best way to do it is to keep moving it around the room, and from the listening position, find out where the point is that it does the least amount of harm. The problem with that is that most people aren't going to put it in the best position. They're going to put it where it looks right, where it looks good, and just deal with the problems. Now, there are systems that, some of the Pioneer MCSE, the latest version, the Odysseys, they will do some sub-EQ, but they usually don't do them as well as I think what we're doing here at the different level we do. Now, we wanted to do this, and there are solutions out there that you can buy a microphone, or they come with a microphone, you can put in the position to do these types of things, but those subwoofers usually cost $1,500, $2,000, $2,500, if not more. We started thinking, well, what is it? We've now baked it to where you can control the subwoofer. Why not use the microphone and the phone? Now, a lot of people say, well, I don't know what a microphone does. How is that going to work? So to eliminate that, what we've done is we've kind of taken the microphone out of, it's no longer a problem. It's not really in the way, and we'll tell you how. When you actually calibrate this, and I'll do it out there for you guys since these have been calibrated already, is we ask you to hold the phone in the near field. So we launch the app, go to Auto EQ, and it has you hold it within 1 foot. And I would say better, the closer the better most of the time. And it's going to play a series of test tones. And all the phone is doing is saying, this is what these 10 test tones sound like to the microphone that's being listened to. And it stores them. Then it has you go over and sit down and sit in your listening position and plays those same 10 tones back. And it looks, what are the differences from what it heard here, where the room is not a factor because it's near field, it's not peak and room interaction. And it says, okay, this is what it sounded like here, this is what it sounded like here. Let's do EQ adjustments to make it sound exactly the same as it did in the near field. And in essence, what that is, it took out all the room modes, took out all the room prompts, got rid of peaks and dips and all these things that you would normally have to deal with when you put a subwoofer just where you want it. And it helps, and it gives you a much better experience. And we can demonstrate.
It doesn't rely on knowing the response of the microphone.
It doesn't matter what the response to the microphone.
All you're trying to do is repeat the curve that you measured in the near field.
Measuring delta.
The direction of the microphone
That's
may be very
frequency only,
sensitive.
right?
It can be. So you definitely want to leave the microphone in the same position. It could be.
It's all parametric EQs. So anything you do to improve the frequency response will improve the phase response.
Yeah, because I was always thinking, you have a special calibrated microphone to do room
I don't
measurements and
have-
all that kind of stuff, but this eliminates that.
I don't know what it is. Now, if you want to improve the performance of it, which I did earlier here, and I don't know what I did with it, is I bought the little Dayton microphone. It's $13 to $20. It's a little microphone that you plug into your phone or you plug into your computer, and on the back of it actually has a serial number on the back. You log into the Dayton website, you download a file, which is the calibration file. You load it in your phone, and now you have a calibrated microphone. I literally paid $13 or $17 from Amazon, and I plug it in there, and it even has a little hand to pop it up, and that is what you can use. And now I've got a full range microphone that is as directional as it needs to be, and you can do it that way. So you can do that as well if you want to improve the quality of the sub EQ that we've done. So,
So at the Newport show, when you demonstrated that, you held the phone next to the speaker and you said, "I'm calibrating the mic."
yeah, that's what it
Because
says on
I'm
there.
comparing the file against what it recorded, now I'm gonna sit in the position.
Yeah, I said I'm calibrating the mic as a simple way of explaining it.
Yeah.
Because whether you say it's actually calibrating the mic or it's compensating or taking the mic out of the equation, it's achieving the same end. But to truly calibrate the mic, you'd have to know exactly what the frequency response of the subwoofer is supposed to be. So you'd have to have a file in your app for every subwoofer that you might have, know what it should measure like in the near field, and use that.
Right.
But we're not actually doing it like that. All we're doing is making this measurement look like that one. So you could say that's calibrating the mic, or you could say it's just taking the microphone out of the equation.
And then we had to come up with what we're going to call it when you ran through the app. Because right now it says microphone calibration, but
Yeah.
it's basically it's near field measurement. And the app will be updated. We'll show you where to place it in front of it. We're actually working on a different version of the app for another product that's going to be coming. So we love the Bluetooth control. We literally think it's great because there's no pairing, there's no worry about IR signals. You can actually control over third party. You can send Bluetooth signals over Ethernet, which may not seem like a big deal for a lot of people, but for the custom install market, it's fantastic. You know, for HDMI, you can send IR signals over HDMI, you can send IR signals over Ethernet. It's going to be a big deal, so you can control different products. And we're working on some electronics that'll take advantage of this. And if you imagine putting this tech in an amplifier or something, just imagine the cool stuff you could do with some of this. But it's a very cool application, and it's in the 10-inch version and in the 12-inch, and they sell for $499 and $699. So we're not charging a huge amount for a subwoofer with some cool tech that's not found in there. Now I will tell you, one of the number one questions, and I thought we'd be much further along than we are, is how do you make it work with multiple subs? If I have this sub and that sub, you can calibrate each two individually, but the subs will interact with each other when they're both firing, because they're both going to be firing at the same time, since there's no stereo sub output on separate discrete channels.
Most
Um,
AVRs were three rows,
Yeah, and they have stereo. They have two outputs, but they're the
But they're
exact same.
the same
They're
signal.
the exact same. It's just a splitter,
Right.
and people say 5.2.
I know.
5.1 plus. It should be 5.1 plus 1.
Right.
All right. But we are working on it, but it's not done yet, because the problem we're running into is, in order to do this properly, we have to be able to do the near field, and then have them both simultaneously play to do in the middle. Bluetooth has a hard time talking to two devices at the same time over this type. Not that it's impossible, but one thing I will tell you, and we can't guarantee it, but the subs are firmware upgradable. You see there's a USB port in the back of it. We send you a file, you plug it in the back, unplug the power, plug it back in. 30 seconds later, your sub now has new capabilities. Plus, the app gives you a single parametric EQ. We will expand how many parametric EQs the customer can actually do it. So even if you run the sub EQ, you still have a little bit of a peak in somewhere, you can go in and tone that down as well.
Didn't the previous slide say 10?
That's for the automatic EQ, because it's 10.
Okay.
Manual adjustments is only 1 right now. We will have a sub, you'll see, there's one of the German subs, the sub 2090 actually has 4 different bands that you can do it on. And you'll see the expand, but it's a more expensive, has a bigger DSP and those types of things.
And the big advantage of being software upgradable later on is that, you know, we already talked about, as a design engineer, I've never finished designing. Well, I can continue and just every few months send you an upgrade. This is my latest thought on what this should be.
Chris loves that.
Yeah, I love that. Don't unplug while updating. Don't do this. That's the type of things that go with firmware updates. But that's the way it works. And we can, like I said, that is the debut series. As I mentioned, there will be an additional floor standard, which I think is in that room. And then there will be a smaller bookshelf as well that we'll announce here, or show, I guess announcing. I don't know if we'll take it anywhere or not, but there is going to be a smaller bookshelf. That we're looking at that. So the 5-inch is $229. We're looking at the 4-inch to be $179. So it's just trying to do it. Literally is the same. It's going to be $50 difference between all the 3 steps here, and that would be designed for the person that's even looking for a more affordable option. So that's the debut series. And stand in front of it, because I'm not sure what's saying. This is the dealer presentation. Oh, a marketing plan. A lot of you guys care about this, but basically, we're building a brand new website that's going to combine the US side and the German website, and it's going to be tons of videos that we shot videos yesterday on how to use the subwoofer. We're going to do lots of really cool stuff with the website. That'll launch right around CES time. It'll actually be at CES. Oh, I'll get to that in a minute. PR, we're sending out products for reviews right now. We're exhibiting at key trade shows. We'll be at CES. We'll be at Rocky Mountain. We are going to do that. We launched an advertising campaign in November that'll run through beginning of November all the way through the holiday season. And we're going to host consumer demo nights. So you guys should stay tuned for that. Just stay tuned for it.
That'll never work.
Here?
Yeah, we might even do it here, I think. Yeah.
Try the weekend.
I know. That's what we have to figure that out. Well, I definitely think Thursday's a bad day for you.
Well, it's a very bad
At
day
least
for
you
me.
could have come down earlier and had lunch and hung out and not worry about
Any
that.
other day of the week, I'd have been happy to do that.
You know why I didn't choose last night? Because I wanted to watch the debate. That's actually my original idea was Wednesday. I didn't think about you, Scott. I'm sorry.
I wouldn't have been able to make
You've been
Wednesday.
And
trumped.
he would have been able to
I've
make
been trumped.
We may all get trumped.
So shows. So Newport, Andrew did the California Audio Show a couple weeks ago in San Francisco. Rocky Mountain is the next big show. Then he's going to London for whatever that show's called. CES. We were originally going to have one room.
That's an interesting point. I'm going to do a presentation at the Hi-Fi News Show. It'll be the first hi-fi show I've ever done.
In England.
I've been in England, yeah. I've been gone for 22 years. When I was with Carefolk there, I didn't do the hi-fi shows. You know, the engineers, they didn't let you out to do. And so,
Because the shows only last for 3 days, not 6 like you would think. I want to get people through the demos.
Usually a matter of hygiene.
yeah, that was, what did I say? Invention is
Perspiration.
5% inspiration and 95% perspiration, which is why engineers smell so bad.
So CES, we had a single room at the Venetian we were going to use to demonstrate some new speakers. I told you there's one out there. I'll show you a sneak peek, but no photos, unfortunately. But then yesterday we took over a second room. So we're going to have the two rooms directly across from each other. One will be the demo of the speakers and seeing all the new stuff, and the other one will be dedicated to electronics. So we will be getting into the electronics business. We will not be doing an AV receiver.
Who's doing your electronics?
We're part of the process, but we're using a third party that we did to use the subwoofer EQ. So we use a third party company in Canada to do a lot of the development of things like that. But the ideas, the concepts, the products are all being stuff that we would like to do with these things. So I'm going to show you one of them tonight, but the camera's about to go off. So.
No.
Sorry. No. And I'm going to have everybody pinky swear. The reason I asked for your names, and I don't think we got addresses, so we could come find you.
Sure,
So CES, like I said, we'll be there for the entire show in 2 different rooms dedicated to some really cool stuff. And we'll have the our boss, Gunter Curtin, who is the managing director of ELAC for Germany, will be there, then Monica, the salesperson. And then we'll do high-end show in Munich. We'll do the Newport show. And then in January, these are all actually timed towards product introductions too, by the way, if that gives you an idea. This is idea for, it even says right there, ultra high-end, is the idea for 2017 CES to show the final.
Let me loose.
Yeah, let them loose with almost a blank check. Almost. And this is all just what people said and how great Andrew is. Oh, stop there.
Right.
So that's that. Should I do the demo of the other thing first, and then let you do demos of the speakers? Or
Yeah.